Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek and I got a little bit of a bonus video for you guys today because we're going to be doing an update to the 3D M2 emulation improvements in MAME with a custom artifact build from Tova. That is because it's been updated a little bit more, and the one game I didn't take a look at last time I talked about this one, I was on quote-unquote vacation, was Heat of 1198 or World Soccer Championship if you're in Japan. This is an amazing soccer game, and obviously I'm going to call it football as well for the rest of the world, and considering the World Cup is currently going on, and in about 4 hours, Belgium is going to be playing in their game and hopefully winning. I figured this would be a great video to talk not only about emulation, but the 3D M2 in general. Because for the longest time, these games, at least 4 of them, were quote-unquote playable in MAME, but they had a lot of slowdown, a lot of audio hitching, and they had the propensity to kind of crash out every once in a while. But Tova went in and basically reworked all of this, so now all 5 3DO M2 games are 100% playable at full speed for basically anyone. And because I had limited time when I talked about the first video and I knew the World Cup was going on, I figured I would save this for a secondary thing just to talk about how complicated this truly is. And because again, the World Cup is currently in full swing, it seems to be a very timely video. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But honestly, Heat of 1198 is a very good football game, and it's probably one that you've never heard of and never played. This thing basically got very little distribution. My board actually came from Latin America, and it did get released in Japan in very limited numbers. But actually finding a board to buy for this, I've only ever seen one for sale in the last 10 years, and that is sitting next to me in the closet right now, coming from Latin America. So this is definitely an exceedingly rare game, and because now Tova has buttoned it up in MAME, it is one of those things that's now completely playable. And honestly, you know me, I always say video game emulation is video game preservation, and for a game that was basically something that you couldn't really enjoy for the longest time, this is absolutely 69 out of 10 amazing on the emulation front. And the best part is the game is just really good, and that's always a win when you get a new playable game, because very often a game that you've never played before will start emulating, or in my instance, a very rare arcade board that I've always wanted to play that doesn't emulate becomes available for sale, and I end up purchasing it and realizing, you know what, the game isn't that good whatsoever, because it is very easy to build up hype in your imagination and head, and then suddenly when you get that game in front of you, it just isn't everything you hoped it would be. But this one is definitely a very fun time, and I can't recommend it enough. Obviously, it's going to be a lot better if you bring a second player along for the ride, which will be able to be done in emulation, but against the CPU, it is still a pretty good time as well. A big thanks to SpaceRock12, one of the members of my Discord, for helping me with the capture while I was away on vacation. I will leave a link to their YouTube page down below, so go toss them a sub, because I'm always a firm believer of a rising tide floats all boats, and I want to see him get a lot more subs and a lot more attention, because he does long plays of all of these new games that are emulating better, so you can really see for posterity how they are working. But Tova has done an incredible job because the 3DO M2 emulation front was always a little bit shaky. And before you ask the question, I do not know if there's any plans in the cards for getting some of the console games to run via emulation. Obviously, IMSA Racing would be the #1 candidate that everyone want to check out, but there's other bits of software that could run within this emulation as well, because there are conversions of some of the M2 games over to the actual kiosk hardware, Battle Tryst being the first game that I talked about on the channel, and hopefully we'll be talking about more soon. And for the people out there that seem to think that the 3DO M2 never released and never got any games, this was a contract in partnership with Konami to develop a JAMA board based upon the 3DO M2, and it has basically the exact same spec as the console, except some of the games actually have double the amount of RAM at 16 megabytes versus 8 megabytes, where Tobe Polystars would be the base console spec of 8 megabytes of RAM, and that was pooled RAM. It could be anything you wanted it to be, video RAM, audio RAM, or otherwise, and that was definitely something you didn't see much back in the day, having that unified RAM structure. But Tova again has done such an amazing job getting these games to play and enjoy. If you notice, every once in a while there is a slowdown that is also on the original arcade board. When there's a lot of stuff going on, it can actually drop a few frames. So this is accurate even if the performance isn't perfect, because it wasn't perfect on real hardware. Let's move over to the first of 2 soundtrack samples so you can hear the audio quality in the emulation. I'll be right back to talk more about how you can play this today in the 3DO M2 in general.
Shows 1 minute to go. How does he handle this? Pushing up! Here's a chance. Shoot! What a fantastic goal! Goal! Great play on the world stage. Spain strikes first. Action replay. It's the kickoff. Paraguay goes for the counter-attack. Good. Passing around. Still keeping the ball. This is a good game. To the right. How does he handle this? Sliding in. Clearance. Spain on top by 1. Wants to make it through.
I mean, it's hard to call that a soundtrack. It is more of a soundscape with the announcer giving you the play-by-play commentary and you're hearing the crowd noise, but it does sound exactly like I would expect, and that really is impressive. And I can't stress enough just how much this was truly needed, because I've been talking about the 3DO M2 since I've had a channel for over 7 years now, and the entire reason I even care about it is because of one very small fact. I saw it previewed in magazines back in the day. I did have a 3DO that my father bought for one Christmas, and I had a pre-order, put $5 down at EB Games, and when it was canceled I was 100% bummed out. And then later on in life, after I basically had the means to be able to collect more things I wanted, I thought to myself, well, I heard a rumor that there's arcade games out there and maybe some other kiosk hardware. I should try to get a hold of it because I'm curious to see what I didn't get back in 1997. And that is the only reason why I actually even collect this 3DO M2 stuff, or games in general. I just was, as a kid, wanting to experience everything that video gaming had to offer, but of course, you had to make choices as a kid unless you were from a very rich family, and I was not. So this is something that just always kind of enamored my attention, and that's why I own all this hardware. And for the longest time, owning the hardware was the only way you could actually experience these games, and I always advocate for the ability for everyone to play everything, because that is more fun. I have never once kept a game in my closet that I could share with everybody else, whether in person or dumping it and making it available online, and I will always do stuff like that just because I want to talk to people that actually get a chance to play these games and enjoy them, so that we can kind of just chat about what this console was really going to be. And had this game come out in 1997, 1998, before Dreamcast was on the market, definitely more impressive than you would see on any other console. But Tova is looking into other hardware out there that utilizes 3D because they want these games to be playable as well, and I really appreciate that. So much so that I told Tova if he needs to borrow any of the hardware in my closet, he can have access to it. I'll ship it out to him so he can do some reverse engineering on it. Or if he needs something particularly checked, I can do it here with all of the different things I have, like my oscilloscope, multimeter, and everything else, because I really do care about these games being able to be played by everyone. But as I've said on the channel before, my coding is just absolutely garbage. I've done a few things, they work, but it's basically held together with duct tape, spit, wood screws, and just absolute hopes, dreams, and prayers. Kind of sounds like Hulk Hogan, but there's no vitamins in there. So it's other people, the ones that are more talented than me at this sort of stuff, that really do bring this magic to everybody, and whatever I can do to help around the edges, I always will. But again, because the World Cup is active, Spain is still in it, it's one of those things that just really is fun to talk about. And while you will be watching this video after the Spain-Belgium game is over, I will say right now, I hope Belgium absolutely wins that, not just because I don't want to see Spain win, because they definitely have a better track record, but one of my close friends in Chicago is originally from Belgium and just wants to see his team take home a World Cup once in his lifetime, because they've never won one. So let's hope that that's what's going on here. You can leave a comment with the result down below, but obviously I'll be watching the game. One more soundtrack sample just so you can catch some more football vibes, and I'll be right back to close it all out.
Passes it frontwards. Now! He catches it! Spain wants to attack quickly. Tight marking. How does he handle this? Goes in by himself. Sliding in! Nice move. He's punted it upfield. How the game developed. Passing around, dribbles the ball. Ejected.
So yeah, big thanks to Tova for doing the work on this, and I hope to be able to help them even minorly with some of this other stuff moving forward, because there's so many 3D games in MAME that either don't work or have emulation issues, and that isn't a knock against them whatsoever. The MAME team does an incredible job. It's just one of those things. There's so many different platforms out there that it basically takes someone to want to come along and actually refine some of them to get them working better. And because you know me, you know I love the 3D M2, a very fascinating piece of hardware. I was absolutely stoked to be able to show everyone that it was now emulating emulating at full speed. And that's coming from somebody who can just take the arcade board out of their closet, plug it into a super gun, and play it anytime they want. But it's not just that I want to be able to play it anytime I want you to be able to play it whenever you want as well, and that's why this is so fundamentally important. So I will leave the video on this. Why do I want Belgium to win the World Cup versus Spain, or at least the game today? Because only one country birthed Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it sure as hell wasn't Spain. And because honestly, just 10 out of 10 action movies, that's what I want. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.